Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 1:02, and I call to order the meeting of the Orange County Sewer District #1 Advisory Committee for Tuesday, November 18th, 2025, and the time is now 2:02. First up, we got to read the rest of the disclaimer here. A copy of the agenda for this meeting may be found on the county website under the tab for the Legislature. Please silence your phones and electronic devices. At this time, I ask you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Kelly, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Amy? Benelli? President. Cheney?
Here.
Ellers?
Here.
Odell?
Here.
Vice President Lynch?
Great. All right, first up, we have Rich Golden, our county attorney. We got Joe Mahoney, a senior assistant county attorney. Eric Denenga, Department of Public Works Commissioner. And Mary Beth Bianconi, partner Delaware engineer. Join us. I'd also like the record to show that we have Mayor Mitchell, Deputy Mayor Ciccarelli.
Snyder.
Snyder.
That's my maiden name though.
I know, that's the, I'm going by the Facebook name. And Councilwoman Mary Bingham, trustee, Village of Monroe, John Carl, administrator from Curious Joel, Vidalia Zegadin, and I think we have everybody. All right, first up, we have the 1A design phase update for the Harriman wastewater treatment plant / bond resolution. Mary Beth? Jump in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, going around.
Good afternoon.
Going around. Most important announcement is I brought cookies.
Hey.
So please have cookies. No, I was cold, so I went and got like a latte, and the cookies looked really good. And I
We'll wait to the end.
There you go. So, welcome everyone to our November meeting. We did not have a meeting in October because it was budget time and there was a lot going on. So this update is covering since September 16th, which is a couple of months now. It's our standard format, so we'll just run through. For design, the workshop meetings continue. I think folks know it's the third Wednesday at 9 a.m. We had a meeting on September 17th and another one on October 15th. 60%, and the next one is tomorrow. 60% design plans were submitted at the end of September, and the October meeting was in person only. There was no digital option there. And the group did a page turn. So they literally sat and went through every page so that everyone got good visibility into where we are. And I'm still looking at some of the considerations, design points, different technology selections, those kinds of things. Which leads to our next point, which is the hydraulics. This is the same hydraulic information that I presented the last couple of meetings. It's still under consideration, but at the moment, everyone seems really comfortable with average day flow. I know this is a lot of word salad, as they say. So average day flow of 9 million gallons a day, peak hydraulic flow of 31.8 million gallons a day, wet rag load between 4 and 6.5 cubic yards per million gallons per day. We are still continuing to assess the screens for the HUDWorks 21.2 mg mechanical screens with one manual screen provision and a fourth channel, so we can add a screen for future. That has not changed since the last meeting. There is some additional information regarding selection of technologies for the screens. The group had gone and looked at screens in the field in Coxsackie, New York, because those are similar size. And those are Duperon FRIQ screens, so they got to see those live and in person. Another option we're looking at is something called Headworks, and that's their MS2 screen. If anybody has nothing but particularly in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep, you can Google those. There's neat online information about both those. With respect to secondary access, this is not an update necessarily. DOT did not have any comments on our plans. The final plans, I believe, have been finished. It says in development, I believe they're finished at this point. The application for surplus property was submitted on August 27th. And we did originally think that we were going to do have a temporary access easement that would be separate from the highway work permit. DOT has informed us that they want that to all be one action, one item, which is fine either way. No issues there. So the good news is we are continuing to assess and move forward with and secure the ability to have that secondary access directly off the main highway, which will be both for construction and for permanent operations, which again will relieve some of the truck traffic off the local road network on Evergreen and River.
So that will be temporary, we're gonna.
It's gonna be permanent.
Permanent, great.
Yep,
Oh, 17.
off 17,
Off 17.
Yep.
Great.
which is great. We've never had access to what we call the back of the site, directly.
Yeah, and it's pending approvals from the DOT, but right now it all seems like it's gonna be
Very good.
issue.
Exactly. We've advanced design a long way when we start talking about things like building layouts and office layouts and interior spaces. So there's been quite a bit of discussion in the design planning regarding that. And we also have launched the discussion regarding odor control. Odor control is a huge part of this project. It's very important. We identified that, obviously, it's a longstanding problem. It's been identified for some time. We have been talking about the different technical options as to how to implement the solutions that we've identified, but for everybody, kind of just a little bit of review. Today, the odor control scheme on the site is one where the odors are created and then there's work done to eliminate those odors in the environment. That's a very challenging way to control odors. The new process will control odors at their source of origination before they're in the environment. And that's a huge difference. And that's why we're really confident about being able to get odors under control here on this site. And just, because this is my disclosure, which is it's a wastewater treatment plant, they smell, right? So there will be times where it's not going to smell like, a florist shop, but the odors are going to be substantially reduced with this. I don't want anybody to run around and say, she said there would be no odors, because it's almost impossible. Sub-consultants, the only update really, survey was done quite some time ago, lead and asbestos. This says report was due in July. We actually have that report in hand. And the geotech, just forgot to update that. The geotech work, there was geotech work conducted in the middle of September. We received a draft report. There was quite a bit of exchange of information between the sub-consultant and our folks regarding things needed with respect to that geotech work. And I know there was a call last week. And so some additional work is being done. I don't know at this point, I know folks on the team would know if that's going to require some additional field work or if we have enough data from the prior field work, but that is being advanced. And for folks to remember, right, the geotech has a number of different purposes in this site. One is to assess subsurface conditions in terms of rock and groundwater. Two is to evaluate footings, foundations for design purposes, bearing capacities, those kinds of things. And then three is to advance a dewatering plan for this site, which will require a permit from the state. So those things all work together with respect to geotech. For regulatory Status on the bottom of the page, that's not a change in terms of the information that you have. The change is that we submitted the NOIA1 response on October 31st of this, just a couple weeks ago. And NOIA1, folks will remember, so that stands for Notice of Incomplete Application, has to do with our 9 million gallon a day speedies permit. One of the critical pieces of NOIA1 is something called an Enhanced Public Participation Plan. I brought a copy of it in case anybody wants to see what it looks like. But it is part of our community engagement process. If you'd like to take a look at that for this project. The way that this works is our treatment plant is located within a potential environmental justice area as well as a disadvantaged community area. This is a state policy that is an attempt to look kind of into the past and say that a lot of our less desirable land uses ended up in locations where populations over time were beset with one undesirable land use after the next, I happen to be a believer that this was not some evil public policy to do bad things to people. I think it was simply driven by the factors of usually cost of land, right? So for a lot of public infrastructure, the goal is build it where the land is the less expensive and the least likely to be subject to intense development. That's why it ended up where it is. So this is a policy that is looking at, how do you now, as the state is issuing permits and making regulatory actions with respect to these land uses, how do you engage the local communities to make sure that they're informed and that their voices are heard and that there's an understanding that these land uses do shape and change the character of these areas. And so for the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant, our folks in Harriman, our folks in Woodbury, who are very, very close by, are largely impacted, by truck traffic, by odors, and by the appearance of the plant. So the meetings that are outlined here would be to address those concerns and get public feedback on those issues. So you'll see that in there. That was submitted to DEC on October 31st. They acknowledged that they received it, and we're looking forward to scheduling. We've had a lot of success with DEC with scheduling technical calls just to walk through our submissions and make sure that we're all on the same page. So that is advancing, and again, that's for our 9 million gallon a day speedies permit. On our 6 speedies permit, the one we have today, the only thing that's going on there is folks may remember we have a couple of pending actions with respect to that one. The one that we're most focused on is we received an extension of that permit because that permit expired back in March of 2025. State, we submitted an application, the county submitted an application to continue that permit. State acknowledged it, and they continue the permit. But we, at some point, they continued it administratively, which means they sent us a letter. At some point, they will actually reissue that permit as an actual permit. And we've been working with them on a couple of the details that are in that permit just to make them better align with where we are with the future project. So that's really what's going on with that one. So we're in good shape from a regulatory perspective. On to financing. So not a huge amount of change in status here for financing. Clean Water State Revolving Fund, CWSRF, is our underlying borrowing for this project. The only change here that you see to this list is that the final fiscal year 2026 intended use plan with a start date of October 1st of 2025 has been issued, and it is confirmed that the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant qualifies for $25 million in zero interest borrowing and 30 years of subsidized borrowing for the balance of project costs. And the subsidy under this program is 50% of market rate. Whatever market rate is when we close, it's 50% of that. That is a pretty big deal. The only other update is we were working to try to capture bipartisan infrastructure law funds. Folks may remember Bill, we've talked about this a lot. Bill was adopted during COVID. I get a lot of questions about where did the money go and why isn't it continuing? It was adopted during COVID. It was time bound and limited. It had a set amount of money and it was only gonna last for 5 years. So back 5 years ago, this decision was made and they simply carried that out. The program was a really great program. It gave you 50% grant and 50% zero interest borrowing up to $25 million each. So you did a combination of $50 million in borrowing and or grant from this program. It could also be combined with other programs, grant and loan. And it was targeted at projects that met a combination of water quality objectives, as well as consideration for ability to pay, and communities that had suffered disproportionately from environmental impacts and were economically disadvantaged. While we qualified for all of that, there is no additional funding in the program. So we did not get program dollars. They just all the prior years used up all the money, right? So we're not alone in that boat. So we did not get awarded bipartisan infrastructural law loan and grant, which is too bad, but it is not from anything that we did or didn't do. It is simply the program was time bound and bound in money, and it was, you know, again, my words are they didn't put enough money in there. The state would tell you it was oversubscribed, meaning there were a lot of competitive applications. So we still have 2 pending grant applications out there that, you know, this is one of those, you know, prior success is not indicative of the future. But normally we would hear about these programs towards the end of the year, usually sometime in the middle of December. The governor's office makes announcements. That is not always the case. Sometimes these stretch into the winter time in terms of announcements because they run on the state fiscal year. So they simply would need to be announced before April 1st. But the 2 that we have pending, one is called Water Quality Improvement Program, WQIP. This is up to $10 million and is intended for projects with direct improvement to water quality in stressed watersheds. And that is definitely our project in the Ramapo River Basin. That's not yet announced. And then the other one that is also not yet announced is something called Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, or WIA. This is 25% of net costs after other grants are considered, up to $25 million in $5 million annual increments. We applied for this back in September, and we also do not have an award announcement on that. So we have 2 more.
Do you anticipate anything coming about now, going forward, where there might be other opportunities or grants that come up under this new bill that the federal government's working on? Have you heard of anything? I mean, so if the COVID grant timed out after 5 years or whatever, the usage of it, have you heard any word that there may be some other infrastructure type of programs coming down the road?
On the federal level, the only one I'm aware of is what the Biden administration called the CHIPS and Science Act is going to be reauthorized, more or less the same with a new name. And that is focused on, you know, that may have some side benefits to Orange County with the work of economic development, Orange County Partnership, a bunch of others, but it does not have direct program dollars that would help the Harriman wastewater treatment plant because we are something like 90% residential in this plant, and that one's very much focused on industry. So that's the only one on a federal level that I'm aware of. The state has been, you know, the Water Quality Improvement Program and WIA are both state money. There's no federal dollars in there. They are programs that were created by the state. WQIP has been around for 25 years, a very long time. WIA was originally, there was a test program 2015, 2016, and then it was fully authorized in 2017. They have continued to put money into it. It is very popular. So I would assume we would continue to see those 2 programs be funded. I know the state has a big interest in housing, and there's a number of housing programs. There's the Mid-Hudson Momentum Fund. There are a number of different other climate smart communities and housing programs that we can continue to look at. Our challenge with some of those programs, like I know Dahlia and I have talked a couple times about the housing, the Mid-Hudson Momentum Fund and some of the direct housing dollars, is your project really needs to be very directly tied to the construction of new housing units. And our project is, but it's not as direct a relationship as some other projects. So it may be challenging for us to compete on that basis. But we always keep our eyes open. We're never gonna not apply for something. As the project creeps along and gets more and more and more closer to completion, it becomes more competitive for grants, because one of the things about these grant programs is the state or the federal government sets the funds aside, they intend it to be spent. So what they really don't want to do is give somebody money and then it's 5 years from now by the time you get around to spending it. Or maybe you don't have a full plan of finance, the project can't go forward because you got some piece of the money and you need more from somebody else. So as our project advances through design and through these other steps, we just become more competitive for grants to the extent that they exist. So I think that's probably the best answer that I have. I will also say just the federal government, if you've been watching the activities of people like Doge and others, they're reducing funding that they're putting out to people as opposed to putting more money out to communities. And no matter kind of I think the underpinning is this is an important priority in your community, then you will make space in your local budget to figure out how to build it, as opposed to the federal government doing that. So we're not seeing, and this is typical, the government swings back and forth with whether it funds these types of programs or not. I've been doing this for 35 years and I've seen no money, more money than we knew what to do with, back to no money. You know, we just go, wait a little while and it'll change. That's the best thing I can tell you. Yeah. And I think the only other thing that we can talk about is to perfect our financing application at this point. We are in a position to adopt a bond resolution. And Rick may want to jump in here for this project. It's something we've talked about for some time. And let me just explain, we just talked about, this these other funding sources. We talked about SRF. We said SRF is a grant and there would be a loan. So you might say, well, why are we adopting a bond resolution if someone's going to give us a loan? So the way that those loans work, and this is my very simplistic non-finance explanation for it, is that when you are getting a loan through the SRF program, you're actually selling the state a bond. So unlike if you were, say you're in a municipality, you're gonna go buy a snowplow, right? You're like, I need $500,000 to buy a snowplow. You hire a bond counsel, adopt a bond resolution. They go out on the open market to banks and say, hey, the town of X needs to buy a snowplow. They want to pay it off over the course of 10 years. It's going to be a snowplow. It's a depreciable asset. How much? What will you charge in interest for the town of whatever to get that money, buy the snowplow, and pay it off over 10 years, right? So you're selling that bond to a bank who's giving you the money. They hold the paper, you pay them back, right? So in this case, it's the same thing, except it's the state of New York, right? So it's the EFC who goes out every year annually and issues billions of dollars of bonds, literally, usually they're somewhere right around $1 billion every year of bonds on the market, and they are giving you the money. So you adopting a bond resolution is your sort of pledge that if they loan you the money, you have the ability, because you've now adopted a bond resolution, you have the ability to charge people to pay it back, right? So who pays it back? We've been over this many times. It's the people in the sewer district who are obligated to pay it back, right? Because we have a sewer district. So a couple of other notes on bond resolutions. Bond resolutions are a bunch of sheets of paper written by super nice lawyers that talk about pledging something called faith and credit, which is your ability to go get that money legally from people who are benefited by the project and use it to pay off the debt. They establish the scope of the project. Now, it's not going to be like our giant engineering reports appended to the back of this bond resolution, but there is a description of what you're doing so that everyone can know, okay, we're going to adopt this bond resolution and it has a legitimate public purpose. Right? We're not spending it on buying a house in Florida. We're spending it on our wastewater treatment, right? So there's a description of the project. Again, it's intended to be all encompassing, not super specific. The bond resolution will describe our seeker status. And as people remember, Seeker State Environmental Quality Review Act, we concluded that in the summer of 2024 with an environmental impact statement. So it's going to say that. It's going to have some discussion of how we intend to finance this project. So most of these bond resolutions will, like this one, will probably acknowledge that we're listed for SRF. It will probably acknowledge that we've been designated as a hardship community. And we may, depending on bond council, it may also say that we're also seeking other grants and financing to reduce the project cost. Again, just to be transparent, right, that we are trying to do that. Couple of other things that it will do, it is going to describe a maximum project cost. So the maximum project cost is exactly what it sounds like. It is literally every cost that we have associated with the project, whether it is construction, whether it is the work that we do as your consultant, whether it is charges for the county's financial advisor, bond council costs. We put an ad in the newspaper and it costs us $200, it needs to be in here, right? So it is literally intended to be a very big number. It's important to know that it's the maximum project cost. It is not the amount of your borrowing. Your borrowing is going to be some number less than the maximum project cost. And that's good, right? That's okay. So know that when you see this, we have to include every cost. And we are also sitting here today in late 2025, trying to think about what we think our costs are going to be in 2026, 27, 28, and 29. So we are projecting costs. So it's a big number, right? I mean, like it's intended to be a big number, but we don't want it to scare anybody. It doesn't obligate the county to that figure. It simply sets a top. That's its job. And one of the things that we're always cautious about is we don't want it to be too much. Like we have an estimate we just recently did, but I mean, it's our estimate. It's exactly that. It's educated, but it's an estimate. We don't want our number to be so close. We don't want to be so constrained in the number we put in here for maximum project cost that we get to bidding and we add up everything and we go, we went too low, right? Because what happens if your maximum project cost is too low, you have to do this process again to say, oops, we were too low. Now we need another number. So it's one of these things where I've been doing this for a really long time where it can be really, it's a little trying for people because you're saying, listen, I'm giving you a number that's a really big number. And I know it makes you uncomfortable, but we're better off giving you a higher number and then being well under it than we are saying, we're all comfortable with this lower number, let's put it in there, and then 2 years from now, we get bids in and it's something different, so.
Big question, when do we get that big?
I have it today.
I'll keep everybody in suspense. That's with this question. So when you said include every cost, are we looking back as well? So that it would include costs that we have already spent?
Yes, yeah, so which is mostly us.
Right, no,
So
I get it.
Conveniently, we have that cost.
Yeah.
The other thing that it does, that the bond resolution does, and again, it does a lot of stuff, but I'm giving you kind of the highlights. The other thing it does is it establishes something called a PPU, or a period of probable usefulness. And this is related to the thing you're building. How long will it be useful? How long will you be using it? And it has to do with the term of your borrowing. So one of the things, and I like this, it's a gatekeeping mechanism, right? Like I used that snowplow as an example, and I said it would be 10 years of borrowing. If you wanted to buy the snowplow and you said, I want to borrow money for 30 years for the snowplow, someone might look at you and go, is that snowplow really going to be used 30 years from now? So your borrowing would extend the useful life of the snowplow. So you probably have to do away with the snowplow. You'd still be paying it back with no snowplow. So the period of probable usefulness is designed and intended to line up the term of the borrowing with the value of the assets that the usefulness literally of the assets you're building. So we have done a new estimate. We have, and I know this is a ton of numbers, but our new capital cost estimate, and this is projected out to our bid date, late 26, early 27, is $156,997,50. That is comprised of, and I will not go through, but I will tell you, kind of read the list, right? It is comprised of new screenings, grit and grease removal. So that's the headworks. New chemical feed, a new rehabilitating the filter building, the brand new SPR, which is the heart of the biological heart of the process, post-equalization and chemical feed, new flocculation tanks and disc filters, new disinfection, UV disinfection, post-aeration, and a non-potable water system, plant water, train 3 chemical feed upgrades, sludge holding tanks, new outfall, site work demolition, something called SCADA, which is the computer system that acquires information and runs the plant, helping the people, electrical system upgrades, HVAC, plumbing, and general conditions. So those all add up to that 156,997,050. One of the things you'll know is I kind of outlined what was new and what was rehabilitation. We do divide that out so that when bond counsel looks at this and they look at that period of probable usefulness, something that is new is going to have a longer useful life than something that is a rehabilitation. There's schedule of values in local finance law that they look at. Our project, as it is programmed right now, is 95% new, 5% rehab. The balance of costs on this project, back to Barry's question, we have, for engineering, we have just put a plug number of 10% of capital in here. We do not expect it to be this high. Again, this is one of those places where we can put a little bit of extra cushion in. By the way, these numbers, I'll get to contingency in a second. These numbers are just escalated to bid day, but they don't include contingency yet. So we have 15,699,75 for engineering as 10% of capital. For bond and for fiscal services, we have $175,000 each. And for contingency, we did 20% contingency at this stage of design. It's $31,398,150. Add all of those numbers up, the total maximum project cost is $204,437,975. And that assumes a bid date of late 26 or early 27, depending on when these.
Was it again, 204?
204, 437, 975.
Very
Maximum project cost.
also be transparent. This is the amount to complete the upgrade to the facility itself and not as to any associated upgrades needed in the feeder piping, et cetera.
Correct, the collection system is separate. Yes. Big number.
And do we, those other costs that Rick mentioned, do we calculate those costs?
So for the collection system, for the pipes, so folks may remember when we did the upgrade to the facility plan and we did the seeker analysis, we developed a hydraulic model that allows us to model the current system as it is with all of its inputs. And this is, by the way, I should say, this is only, our model is only for the OCSD1 trunk sewers, so the big ones, right? To account for everything out in the satellite communities, we took the gallons that they put into the trunk sewer and just sort of added it at that point. We were able to then determine that we needed to make certain upgrades to that network of pipes. We evaluated, right now, that pipe network has served you extremely well. It was built a very long time ago, and it works today, but as we add more users, it's not going to, right, it's not going to carry all that water. So I believe, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since we did this estimate, and it was based on very conceptual work. I'm gonna say we were around 60 million, something like that at the time. But I think what the county is looking to do is that to get to where you are with this, for that, a couple of steps need to be undertaken. The whole system inside the OCSD, the trunk system needs to be surveyed. You need to get a land surveyor out there. It has to be surveyed, all of the right-of-ways and easements for it, because some of it's in public, some of it's not, have to be reestablished. Someone needs to take the hydraulic model that was prepared and ground truth it, because there was a lot of like pipe size and material where we didn't have as-built drawings. And so we met in the field, we popped manholes, we did our own assessment, best we could. So somebody's gonna have to confirm all of that, confirm our numbers, confirm the size of pipe that we had, confirm that we, the extent of the expansion that we did was adequate, and then conduct another cost assessment. And then from there, detailed design will need to be done. So there's some steps associated with the collection system that need to be undertaken to get to a more fine point on the costs.
Legislative.
Thank you. When you say someone needs to, who is the someone? What?
There'll be an RFP that will be going out for that design.
Okay,
And I just asked Eric, he said he thinks it's about a month or so out.
okay.
That-
Yeah,
That was gonna
it's
be my
under
next
review right
question.
now.
What's the time?
Yeah, my engineers in my office and Joe have been going back and forth reviewing that, and trying to get that out as soon as possible. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think month and a half. Yes.
Yeah.
Peter,
Yes, legislative change.
the confirmation of the sizes, why is that necessary?
Again, because someone's gonna need to identify every pipe. We didn't pop every manhole, right? We did, when we took available existing information. Somebody's gonna need to go evaluate, is there a section of 16-inch in the middle of these 224s that nobody knows is there? So that whole process needs to happen for someone to verify.
So is it going to include going and looking at
It's
what
going-
you did and confirm
That's
that?
gonna happen, yeah.
Mhm.
I would hope you trusted the information provided.
Well, and maybe what we did, this is us saying, if you, we're doing your wastewater treatment plant, somebody else is gonna do your collection system, God love them, whoever that is, right?
All right, then I can understand
Yeah.
that they aren't gonna
Right,
base it on
and they're gonna need,
your
even if
information, they want their own.
even if we went back and did it, we would want to confirm all these things. Our model, our Goshen office is in the old music hall. So we have really tall ceilings. Our model, when we printed it out, literally was wallpaper 20 feet tall and about 20 feet wide. It was literally just sheet after sheet after sheet. It's a very complex system. It has a long history. There are a lot of things we know for sure. We know for sure this is absolutely this. There's a lot of stuff where we're like, best available information says it's something. So we had to make a series of assumptions when we did that work. Somebody would need to prove that stuff. Even if we were doing it, we would have to go do more. Our goal was to create a hydraulic model. It wasn't to do a design. So,
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Should we hop back? Yeah, we're done with this, hop back to the bond resolution and the information that I think would be appropriate for the Business Services Committee to receive, as part of the legislative request. And I think that the kind of what the list you rattled off, certainly that table would be very important.
Mhm.
Thinking that maybe there's not a lot more. The actual calculation of the length of the loan is going to be done by bond counsel, correct, when they look at each one of the items.
What they will do, in this case, it'll be something called a blended PPU.
Right.
So they will take, since it's 95% new, 5% rehabilitation, there isn't a lot of blending to be done. That splits out to 150 million-ish in new and about 7.2 million in rehab. All bond councils kind of handled that calculation differently. I will say you guys have an excellent bond counsel. I've worked with them in the past. They're very, very, very good. So I believe they have this information and I think they're digesting it and.
I assume so. I have not been in contact directly with bond counsel. And I assume, I don't know, I didn't look at the physical service packet as to whether or not that breakdown was in there.
But I
But
don't know.
if you could provide that,
Mhm.
now send it to us or something so that if it's not in the packet, we can reference it.
Then I guess ask our team to kind of think about what questions might be asked as you look at the information you're giving us. And if there's need for a little deeper dive to present as part of the legislative request to do that as well.
I think it was pretty much what Mary Beth just outlined.
Yeah.
And based upon those numbers.
Right.
I mean,
That's the meat of it.
that is it.
Bond resolution will be about 14 pages long. I love lawyers, but there's a lot of lawyer stuff in there.
Protects everybody.
So I sort of gave you the hit parade,
Nobody has to read the whole thing.
the only
before
parts I read. So we're all the same, well, which is good, right? They're all in conformance with law. I mean, the law is pretty straightforward and clear on how you do this, so.
Legislative Benelli?
Thank you. So it appears that we're all working on this. So would we anticipate that this is going to be on physical for November?
Yeah, my understanding is that.
Okay.
We have
It'll be Monday.
The physical services committee meeting is scheduled for this Monday,
Yeah, I
but
thought
I
we
did
were-
not see it
I
legislative.
thought we were doing it for December. December.
Just keep in mind that December committees are earlier than normal.
Yeah, right. Everything has to be condensed in December.
Basically, it's on the December session.
Well, I'll double check that. I can't remember.
Well, then the first December session.
I was November.
I thought it was for Monday.
Not Monday? Okay. We'll double check that and see if they're.
You're gonna look to do it Monday?
But
That was the
our
original
goal.
intent.
Okay, so, I mean, tomorrow is basically the agenda gets put together for Monday.
I think that there was a legislative request submitted.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out.
They don't have.
You're
it.
saying you don't see it.
That's
But
why nothing's been received in the office, and there was nothing that I saw in the portal indicating that it was being circulated.
Right.
We'll double check on that.
And Eric, you have, everything I just read to you in that table was in an email I sent you on November 11th. It's the same one that I sent to council.
We'll have that.
And if,
That-
do you guys want me to follow up with council?
Just make it, well, you
Go,
go
you
ahead.
go first.
I just wanted to make note that usually the second meeting in December is the end of the year meeting. We usually don't do a lot of business there, so it would be preferable if we could get it done on December 4th. If you can get it to the office, or at least something that is a placeholder for the agenda on Monday.
But if not, we'll do it on the 18th. I'm not gonna slow it.
Yeah, I get it.
If not, we'll do it on the 18th. It's only 14 days apart, meetings. The committees will have to happen before.
So,
you.
Mary Beth, in your report today, you said at the end of September, we were at 60% design. Is that what your numbers are based on, that 60% design? And you're still comfortable with only a 20% contingency?
Because we've done that geotech. That's really the big unknown, right?
Oh,
Is what
okay,
are
so
subsurface- What are
that,
subsurface conditions? What are we dealing with? Do we anticipate having major issues? That's one of the questions that came up. So when they, and you appreciate this, so when they, we wanted them to bore to a depth certain. They bored to refusal. It's one of the reasons we think we need to send them back in the field, because we want them to bore to a depth certain, because there's some debate among the geologists as to whether we hit rock, well, we hit bedrock, or if we hit boulder. They sent it off to a lab, they had a long conversation, and I literally understand one word that they said, and at the end, I'm like, so do we know? And they said, no, we don't know. So, but that's one of the reasons why we wanted, why we're pretty comfortable with this, because we now have a really good groundwater characterization, really good bearing capacity, and I think the only question that we had was, are we dealing with what at 60 feet? What, yeah, when they hit, because they hit refusal at different elevations and different, okay, we were sort of like, you're making me feel like you can get there.
Yeah.
So, we had a good call with them last week, to better outline. I don't think they appreciate how big these tanks are. These tanks are really big, like really, really, really big. And so we really need, we need to know that, but I think we're pretty.
Okay, good.
That's our unknown, if you think about it. Everything else we can know. It's what's going on underneath the ground that,
But again, you also have to accommodate for, you did the escalated prices in the individual items.
We
So
did.
that was covered.
we did. And a little plug here for another company, Pike, who is a huge contractor and construction manager. Every quarter they put out their quarterly evaluation of men, materials, machinery. And you can actually, and they have a really good tracker. You can sign up for free to get their information. And you can track like the price of different components. And right now, we do have, I mean, just so everybody knows, right, the electrical portion of this project, because this is where all of the price volatility is today, no one should be shocked to hear that, is $19 million. Right, so that's a lot of money, right, for electrical, and considering that we don't need new service. There's upgrades and switch gear and motors and those kinds of things, but that's where all the volatility has been since COVID, and that's where it continues to be. As in the past, you know, lumber, you're building houses, lumber prices are down from almost pre-2019, which is kind of amazing, but it's the only thing that's down.
She's later talking about.
19 million?
19 million for electrical.
No, I'm thinking how many, I haven't seen blueprints for the electrical, but what do we have in terms of switchgear and? Because,
60 I think
like
the
you said, the
60%
price is
plans-
very volatile.
60% plans are in Eric's office if you want to look at the.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, how many pages is the electrical part of the plans? Could that be
And right now we don't,
segmented out?
we don't have, well, so we also don't have a spec book yet. We're at 60%. So there's more to go. But know that we do, I mean, we have a dedicated electrical staff in our office that does high yard work. So this is what they do. So they're,
It just seemed, when I'm thinking about, you know, switchgear and I'm thinking about what the prices are in the market, because it's something I have to deal with on a daily basis. I'm going, geez, I don't think 19 million, depending on what the plans show.
19 million, but then 20% contingency on top of 19 million too.
It's also for doing-
But I'm thinking your 20% contingency is your overall contingency for every component, not just the electrical.
Well, right, 31 million is 20% of the total, but then it's 20% for each piece, right? Right, like it's just the operation of math. So it's, electrical is substantial, you know, if you kind of look at the hit parade for what's the most expensive stuff on the site, the SBR is very expensive. The new filters are very expensive. The headworks is a very expensive piece of infrastructure. Site work is very expensive. Yeah, it's
Not a,
this is not a, it's interesting. It's
not an inexpensive project.
no, and again, part of it is driven by you have an existing plant that you have to keep running while you build a new plant on the same site. So that drives like some of the site work costs, you know, the headworks that we have has to sit there and be a headworks while we build a new one right next door to it.
Right.
And then someday we're just gonna shut the old one off and turn the new one on. So you have to design everything. So that has a construction component to it as well, in terms of you're telling the contractor, it's not just a blank slate, you can't go do whatever you want, whenever you want. There's gonna be a sequence, you know, those kinds of things. So that adds to some cost as well. But it's, you know, reusing existing infrastructure is the way to go. It's objectively substantially less expensive than building brand new stuff on greenfields. It does add some complexity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Questions? Very good. Anything else? We covered the grants, we covered everything so far. The only thing left to have is the engineer report for the H2S gas levels. With Bob Gray is out sick today, so what we'll do is just take it next meeting. He can give 2 months worth of the updates, but it's been quiet. There's no
Yeah, the latest levels are below DEC standards, like they have with all the ambient levels, and we're gonna be putting in some new upgrading some of the sealed manholes, a bit even better sealed manholes as well. I did some gas testing, or, yeah, some leak testing. Smooth testing.
All right. Any other, comments or questions? Yes,
Yeah,
Chairman.
just when will your next meeting be? Are you gonna meet in December or not? Because the committees start pretty early, but you could do it if you have to, but
I would like to meet in December just to wrap up the year. And we can kind of close out that hydrogen sulfide gas meetings and start anew. So what day would that,
pretty quick. I don't know if anything's gonna be updated in 9 days.
would really just be that hydrogen sulfide, so we go to January. All right, so we won't meet in December then.
Or you could have the master question of physical services if Bob's gonna be here that day.
Okay. We could do a little
In December.
segment, the physical, just do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that. We won't have to call the whole group together. That's December 9th?
Yes.
Okay, no, physical,
That's the human resources. What would you need? 15.
15th.
Yes.
Okay, nothing else, and meeting adjourned.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor?
Check on that.